Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a pretty stark reality for every single business leader operating in the UAE. We are talking about the sheer urgency of cybersecurity compliance based on some really eye-opening insights from Atlant Security. Look, if you're making decisions for a company, whether you're a scrappy, fast-scaling startup or a massive established enterprise, and you're sitting there thinking your data is perfectly safe just because you haven't been breached yet, well, this explainer is exactly for you. We need to dive into this right now because the stakes have literally never been higher and the rules of the game have fundamentally changed. Just look at this number, 71 million. Let's start with the emotional reality on the ground here. According to the UAE Cybersecurity Council, the country repelled over 71 million cyber attacks in just one single month in 2023. I mean, let that sink in for a second. The UAE is under an absolute constant cyber siege. We aren't talking about some theoretical, maybe someday threat. It is a relentless, daily bombardment. The attack surface out there is expanding so rapidly, and because of that, the regulatory stakes and the financial penalties are absolutely skyrocketing right alongside it. Section 1. The UAE Cyber Siege and the Real Cost of Inaction. The legendary copywriter Joseph Sugarman once said, "The fear of loss is greater than the desire for gain." And let's just be brutally honest for a minute. If your business isn't proactively securing itself in this crazy environment, you are bleeding trust every single day. Your customers might not say it to your face, but they can sense when a company is cutting corners. And if you aren't strictly compliant with the UAE's constantly evolving mandates, you better believe your competitors are going to weaponize that against you in every single pitch and partnership meeting. So what does that loss actually look like in the real world? The source material shares this terrifying boardroom story about a high-growth Dubai fintech startup. We'll just call them Blue Atlas. They had millions in funding, a team of top-tier developers, but they completely brushed off compliance. They just figured, hey, we use AWS, Amazon is secure, we're totally fine. They actually thought regulations were just a headache for the big guys. Well, one quiet Thursday night, a malicious script silently siphoned off 240,000 records. We're talking credit cards, national IDs, emails, the whole shebang. The fallout was devastating. 2.7 million dirhams in lost revenue immediately gone. They faced legal action from 3 different countries. Their upcoming Series B funding was pulled entirely off the table, and the founder's reputation was just shattered. And you know what the most bitter irony is? Doing compliance right would have cost them maybe 1% of what they ended up losing. So the absolutely crucial thing here is figuring out exactly where you stand before your own quiet Thursday night happens. Let's do a really quick mental self-audit. On the left side, we've got the red flags of false security. This is stuff like relying on outdated antivirus, not having a data protection officer, treating employee training like some one-and-done checkbox, or having literally zero incident response plan. So many founders think they're fully compliant until they actually read this list. Now, flip over to the right side and compare that to the green flags of true, confident compliance. This means running regular penetration tests, constantly auditing your third-party vendors, enforcing multi-factor authentication everywhere, and having your documentation perfectly ready for an audit at a moment's notice. Just ask yourself right now, did even one of those red flags sting a little bit? Because if it did, you really need to pay attention to this next part. Section 2. Navigating UAE compliance laws. What applies to you? Okay, so the UAE has built this incredibly robust, somewhat complex web of cybersecurity regulations. Look at this breakdown. First, you've got the UAE Cybercrime Law, which applies to all UAE-based companies, carrying massive fines up to 10 million dirhams. Then you get into the zone-specific laws, like the DIFC Data Protection Law and the ADGM Data Protection Regulations. But you really need to pay special attention to these two. NESA, which mandates information assurance standards for critical infrastructure in key sectors like telecom and finance, and then the UAPDPL, the Personal Data Protection Law. That one casts a wide net. It applies to any entity processing personal data. And listen, the penalties here aren't just a slap on the wrist with a fine. We are talking about total bans from processing data, severe regulatory sanctions, and reputational damage you just can't bounce back from. Ignorance of these frameworks? Yeah, that's no longer an acceptable legal defense. Section 3. Compliance as Strategic Advantage. The Hidden ROI. We seriously need to reframe how we talk about compliance. We have to stop looking at it as a pure cost center and start seeing it as an insurance policy that actually pays dividends. What does compliance really buy you at the end of the day? First up, sales leverage. Just try closing an enterprise or government deal in the UAE today without proving you align with NESA, ISO 27001, or SOC 2. Honestly, you just can't. Second is investor confidence. VCs demand low-risk exposure before they'll ever give you a high valuation. Third, operational peace of mind. You stop guessing if you're secure and you start actually knowing it. Fourth, customer trust. In today's market, privacy is your brand currency. And finally, crisis readiness. Because when, and it is a when, not an if, an attack hits, your team responds with a documented playbook instead of running around in a total panic. The entrepreneur Alex Hormozy sums up the psychology behind this ROI perfectly. He says, the minute you remove risk, people lean in. When you actively engineer certainty into your company's systems, you aren't just locking down data. You are removing the friction that stops people from buying from you, partnering with you, or investing their money in you. Lowering your cyber risk exposure is a direct pipeline to faster growth. Section 4. The 3-step compliance roadmap. Assess, implement, prove. You really don't need some overwhelming 100-step action plan to get this done. You just need a very clear, actionable path. Atlant Security lays out a proven, simple 1-2-3 execution playbook. Step 1 is assess. You absolutely have to know where you stand today. That means sitting down for a brutally honest gap analysis that covers your network, your employees' actual awareness levels, and your legal blind spots. Step 2 is implement. Fix the gaps you just found. Harden your cloud architecture, roll out solid endpoint protection, and train your staff. Basically, turn the abstract rules into concrete action. And step 3 is prove, because compliance isn't real unless it's totally provable. You need those audit logs, risk assessments, and vendor contract trails. This is all about giving you defensive clarity for when a regulator or a major partner inevitably comes knocking on your door. Section 5. Timelines, costs, and action. Removing the fog. All right, let's address the elephant in the room because I know business leaders hate uncertainty. The biggest takeaway here is that compliance is not some endless, exhausting black hole. Just look at these realistic timelines. If you are a smaller company under 20 people and you're aiming for basic PDPL and ISO 27001 readiness, you're looking at a very achievable 4 to 6 weeks. For a mid-sized team up to 100 people that needs to add NISA and a formal incident response plan, expect maybe 2 to 3 months. And for large or heavily regulated entities, a full comprehensive rollout takes about 3 to 6 months or more. It's a defined, clearly measurable project. It has an end date. And what about the actual cost? Well, here are the totally transparent ballpark figures. A one-time gap assessment might run you anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000. A full compliance remediation project ranges from $15,000 up to $100,000, depending heavily on your scope. Want a virtual CISO on retainer? That's around $2,500 to $10,000 a month. Now, I really want you to think back to Blue Atlas from a few minutes ago. Remember, they lost 2.7 million dirhams, lost their funding, and got slapped with international lawsuits. When you contrast those kinds of devastating, company-killing losses against these transparent upfront costs, it becomes crystal clear why smart founders view compliance as a strategic investment rather than just an annoying expense. Let's wrap up with one final thought on the real value of what you're building here. Joseph Sugarman reminds us, people don't buy what you do, they buy the transformation you offer. By investing in proper cybersecurity compliance, you aren't just buying firewalls and a bunch of boring policy documents. You are transforming your company from a vulnerable, totally exposed startup into a high-trust, fast-scaling enterprise fortress. You're actively signaling leadership and absolute reliability to the entire market. Which brings us to the ultimate question you have to ask yourself. Right now, there are really only 3 types of companies in the UAE. Are you compliant and thriving? Are you completely exposed without even knowing it? Or are you ready to take strategic action today? Please, don't wait to become a cautionary tale in the headlines. Use the roadmap we've explored today to engineer real certainty into your business. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into UAE cybersecurity compliance. Keep learning, keep securing your growth, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.